The
Here is
latest
your
figures show a
story.
significant increase.
I see.
The
What do you
morning of her
recommend?
wedding,
We should
Amara
reallocate
Ose
resources to
sat
the new
on the edge
project.
of a hotel bathtub in her white dress and called her best friend to say goodbye. Not goodbye the way people say it at airports or at the end of good evenings. Goodbye the way you say it when you believe the life you knew has reached its last page and something unrecognizable is about to begin. She was 20 years old. She had one semester left of her junior year at Ohio State, a minor in creative writing she'd never told her parents about, and a suitcase packed with the remnants of a version of herself she wasn't sure she'd be allowed to keep. His name was Kofi Mensah. He was 41. He had a daughter. He had a house in a suburb of Columbus that she had seen exactly once, briefly, when their families arranged a visit that felt less like a meeting and more like an inspection. He had said perhaps 12 words to her directly across 3 separate family gatherings, all of them polite, none of them personal. He had a face that gave nothing away, steady and unreadable in the manner of someone who had learned, through some private education in pain, not to expect too much from any given moment. Her parents were not cruel people. She needed to hold on to that, even then. They were frightened people, immigrants from Ghana who had built something fragile and beautiful in this country and who believed, with the particular conviction of those who have survived real precarity, that the right husband was the most reliable insurance a daughter could have. Kofi was established, respected in their community, a man of faith who owned his home and raised his child with a steadiness that impressed everyone who knew him. None of that made Amara less terrified walking down that aisle. His daughter's name was Abena, and she was 7, and she was the first thing that surprised Amara. Kofi had warned her, formally, during one of their chaperoned meetings, that Abena could be shy with new people and that she shouldn't take it personally if the adjustment took time. What he had not warned her was that Abena, upon meeting Amara for the first time as her stepmother, would study her face for a long, serious moment and then announce, "Your eyebrows are very nice. I've been trying to grow mine out but it's not working." Amara laughed, a real laugh, sudden and unguarded, and Abena looked satisfied, as though she had successfully completed a test she designed herself. Kofi watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway. He said nothing, but something in his posture shifted, slightly, like a door easing open a fraction of an inch. The first month was an education in restraint, both of them circling each other with a careful, exhausting politeness. He made coffee in the morning before she woke up and left a cup on the counter without being asked, because somehow he'd learned within 2 weeks that she needed it before she could form complete sentences. She learned that he read for an hour every night before sleep and that the books were always history, never fiction, never self-help, and that he dog-eared pages in a way that suggested he intended to come back to them. They did not pretend to be in love. That was perhaps the thing that made it survivable. There was no performance required, no expectation of a feeling that hadn't had time to grow. They were 2 people sharing a life that had been handed to them by other people, trying to make it into something livable and decent. He never raised his voice. In 30 days, through the friction of new routines and small misunderstandings and the bone-deep awkwardness of sharing space with a stranger, he never once raised his voice. The second surprise came on a Thursday evening in March. Amara had a paper due. She was still taking 2 online courses, quietly, a fact she hadn't mentioned to her parents and hadn't found the moment to mention to Kofi. She was at the kitchen table at 11 p.m., her laptop open, a draft she hated glowing back at her, when she heard him come downstairs. He didn't ask what she was doing. He poured himself a glass of water, glanced at the screen, and said, "What's the paper on?" She braced for something. Confusion, maybe. Or the particular kind of male condescension that frames a woman's ambitions as a charming hobby. Zora Neale Hurston, she said. The way she wrote black womanhood is inherently interior, not defined by external suffering. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's an essay by Alice Walker about Hurston. Might be useful. I can find it if you want." She stared at him. "I was an English minor," he said, with a small shrug. A long time ago. She didn't know that. She didn't know almost anything about who he'd been before he became the man her parents had selected from their community like a careful and well-intentioned mistake. "I'd like that," she said. The essay. He found it in 10 minutes, emailed it to her, and went back to bed without ceremony. She sat at the kitchen table until 1 in the morning, writing the best paper she'd turned in all year, and tried to figure out what to do with the feeling settling quietly in her chest. Not love, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Something like the moment you realize a place you expected to hate might, unexpectedly, have room for you. She told him about Ohio State the following weekend. She sat across from him at the kitchen table. Abena was at a birthday party, the house uncharacteristically quiet, and she told him she had one semester left and she wanted to finish. She told him she'd been afraid to say it. She told him she was still afraid, sitting here now, because she didn't know what he would do with the information and she was tired, deeply tired, of not knowing what the people making decisions about her life would do with information about who she actually was. Kofi listened to all of it. He folded his hands on the table. He looked at her the way he sometimes looked at his history books, like something worth the effort of understanding. "Why would I want you not to finish?" he said. "I don't know," she admitted. Amara. It was the first time he had used her name with that particular weight, the weight of something that mattered. "I had a wife who gave up things she wanted because she thought that's what marriage required." He paused. "She was unhappy for years before she got sick. I don't want to be a reason someone is unhappy." She felt the grief in it, the grief he carried for his late wife, for Abena's mother, for the version of that marriage that had gone unlived. And she felt, alongside it, a fierce and sudden clarity about the kind of man he was. Not perfect, not easy to know, but genuinely, constitutionally incapable of wanting smallness for the people in his care. "I'd like to go to your graduation," he said. "If that would be all right." She had to look away for a moment. At the window, at the ordinary suburban street, at the life she'd been placed inside without her consent and was somehow, slowly, starting to choose. "Yeah," she said. "That would be all right." He was in the third row at the May ceremony, Abena beside him in a yellow dress she'd selected herself, holding a handmade sign that read "We are proud of Amara" in letters of varying sizes because she'd run out of room and had to improvise. Amara walked across that stage and found them in the crowd, her husband and her stepdaughter, both waving with the particular enthusiasm of people who have decided, without reservation, to be in your corner, and she felt something she hadn't expected to feel on the morning of her wedding, in that hotel bathtub, saying goodbye to the girl she'd been. She felt like herself. More herself, actually, than she'd been in years. Like the life ahead of her, however imperfect, however unplanned, had actual room in it for who she was. It wasn't the story she would have written for herself at 20. It turned out to be better.